So it's G20 right now. It's just a bunch of rich globalists getting together talking about how they're going to destroy the planet. Of course, Justin Trudeau being among them. And wouldn't you know it, he's already making a fool of himself. Here's what he said.
Okay. It's important to remember that we have right now a very successful free trade deal with the United States and Mexico that was negotiated and signed by the incoming American president. So we're in a good place right now. There are questions and concerns around some of the Chinese investments in Mexico, things that I highlighted directly with the Mexican president. But I also pledged that we're going to be there to work to ensure that North American trade continues to stay strong and beneficial to all our citizens, including on protecting the integrity of North American markets. So,
so could you imagine taking Trump and taking Trudeau and sitting both of them down together in a room and asking them to negotiate some particular deal? Who do we suppose would come out on top of that negotiation? Like 100 times out of 100, it's Trump, right? There is no comparison when it comes to negotiating prowess between Trump and Trudeau. If I had to choose to be led by either man, and I wanted to see that whatever deal was being put forward was the best for me, for my interests, I'm choosing Trump to facilitate that deal every single time. He will wipe the floor with Trudeau.
These are open conversations. They are at the very beginning. But I can say unequivocally, we will stand up for and defend Canadian jobs and Canadian interests, as we always have.
Yeah, right. Trudeau stands up for everyone except Canadians. That's who he is. He stands up for every other country, it seems, in the world, except for those individuals who apparently voted him into power. That's the way this Liberal government works. They're globalists. They don't want to have just a small Canadian state. They want a super state in which Canada is a microcosm of the entire world. So Trudeau is serving everyone else, except, of course, his country, Canada.
Et comment est-ce que la présidente mexicaine a réagi quand...
L'accord de l'ALENA par rapport à assessments in Mexico, some of the concerns that have a good and frank...
Next question.
Okay, of course. Look, I had a good and frank conversation with the president of Mexico. I highlighted some of the concerns that have been expressed publicly by a number of people around some of the investments in Mexico. But I also know that Mexico is dedicated to continuing in this extraordinarily successful trade deal. And I think the Mexican administration is looking at ways of either adjusting or sharing why people shouldn't be worried about these investments. I mean, these are things that the Mexican government will take on. I shared them as a partner and a friend that there are concerns, but I look forward to lots of discussions over the coming year before we approach the review in 2026.
Right. So as far as negotiating is concerned, Canada right now is on the butchering block. Like, we are in big trouble, right? If anyone thinks that Trudeau here is going to get the best in deals that are negotiated between other superpowers in the world, we're dreaming, or they're dreaming. Not a chance. Not a chance. I think we have to remember that, you know, although a politician can be smart, or politicians can be smart, so often they're very incompetent. That's just the truth, right? They are really so much less impressive than what the news or the television makes them out to be. Right? You see a politician, you see an elected official in person, and you very often discover that they are nowhere near as grand, right? Nowhere near as, they don't have near the presence that you thought the news projected. And I believe the same is true with Trudeau.
Hey, Glenn McGregor, City News. In your conversation with Joe Biden, did he share or explain his decision to approve Ukraine's use of American missiles to strike targets in Russia? And do you agree with that decision?
I have for months now talked about how important it is to degrade the capacity of the Russian military to strike into Ukraine with impunity, because Ukraine hasn't been able to strike on factories and military production sites in Russia. We have called for that for a while, so I think it's a good thing that the United States has done that and other partners are doing that. I had an excellent conversation with President Biden. He is a friend and an ally. We talked about a lot of different things. things, and we're going to continue to make sure we're working together in the coming months.
Could anyone imagine marching to war behind this man or behind most of our Western leaders? Nope. No, the answer is no. You have these absolutely diabolical leaders in power, like Trudeau, who crave war. They do, it's a fact, right? They crave chaos. They crave destruction, and they have no problem seeing our lives suffer because of it. It's egregious, it's wrong, and there is absolutely no chance that we are going to march behind dear Justin Trudeau into battle. Because if he's on one side of a fight, we can almost certainly guarantee it's the wrong side. Just look at his morals, or more accurately, the lack of morals.
Ça fait plusieurs mois que le Canada we're dealing with.
Served another 4 years as president?
As you know, I'm not going to speculate on American electoral process, but I will say that Joe remains an incredibly thoughtful, strong leader who is very much on top of everything we're dealing with.
Next question. Karina Roman, CBC News. On the Mexico bilat that you had yesterday, what assurances did she seek from you, considering the musings, not just by you not closing the door, but also premiers back in Canada talking about how perhaps it should just be a two-way deal?
It wasn't about assurances. It was about a good conversation that sort of lays out some of the challenges we're facing. We know that President Trump, even though he is the one who signed and established the great deal we're all living under right now, which is very much a win-win-win with the current NAFTA, is going to be looking at certain things over the coming years. And we pledge to work together and continue to have frank conversations and make sure that we're protecting trade in North America as best as we can, because we have an extraordinarily successful trading agreement.
And in your meeting with Joe Biden, he was very blunt yesterday in his intervention, saying that this is going to be his last G20. What was it like meeting with him? What was the feeling in the room between the two of you? And did you share personal anecdotes? Was it a little bit less of a formal bilat and more of a passing of the torch?
It was both. There was very much a number of issues that we needed to talk about, that we wanted to talk about, that is still very, very current and will be his responsibility up until the moment of the inauguration. So dealing with an American president, there's always lots of things to talk about. We talked about the fact that we've signed this tremendously promising icebreaker deal. We're moving forward on resolving the Columbia River Treaty. There's a lot of them. We even talked about softwood. So there was things that we continue to talk about as we must. But it was also a nice conversation between two friends who have lived through some challenging past 4 years and who continue to remain optimistic about our capacity to support citizens and create a better world.
Right. So Trudeau commands absolutely no presence, none whatsoever. We have leaders, but no leadership. Right. That is the state of Canada. Leaders, or they call themselves leaders, without any leadership whatsoever. There was not a hint of presence in Trudeau's speech, in the way he answers questions, in the way he acts. It is as though Canada is being driven, or is not being driven at all. Granted, we are being driven into the ground. That's true. But it's as though we have no leader moving us in a direction. Trudeau just does whatever he wishes. He's a progressive. He has no objectives. He has no moral standard. And so he moves wherever he wants to move, without any particular understanding. Well, no, he understands what's right and wrong. He just loves to do what's wrong. That's more accurate.
Juste le dernier bout, optimistic.
Okay. C'était
Judy Trent, CTV News, and perhaps offer you in terms of keeping forward with this agenda that he and other Democratic leaders such as yourself have put on the table?
I was somewhat reminded of my second G20 in 2016 in the Philippines, or I can't remember where it was, but where I got to sit down with President Obama. And he was talking about this being his last G20 and reflecting on the challenges of the imminent Trump presidency and the way the world was going to be shifting, and how important it was to continue to support people to stay focused on the things that matter for citizens and offer stability and ambition for the world. These are the things that we're continuing to talk about. Talk about the G7. My first G7, President Trump was president at that particular time back in Charlevoix, and there were challenges, but we figured out how to move forward in a way that gave $4 billion for women and girls education, that protected our oceans, that moved forward on a first agreement on AI at an international summit. These are things that we were able to do back in 2018, and obviously there's lots more to do in our upcoming G7 in June.
Okay, so obviously any idea that Trudeau is bringing stability, true stability, or that the wolves at the G20, hyenas are more accurate, coyotes, are bringing stability is a lie, is false. All these leaders do is bring chaos. They love the chaos because it enables them to then swoop in and say, let us save the day. Let us solve the chaos. Let us take you out of that pathetic existence where you're scrounging for food. Come to us and we'll give you food stamps. We'll give you homes. We'll give you minimum wage. We'll give you protection. We'll do all of those things to solve the problem that we actually created. The idea that Trudeau brings any sort of stability whatsoever is nonsense. Just look at the banking struggle in Canada right now. You had a man who locked people out of their accounts, out of their bank accounts, and in an instant instituted a set of, or a list of uncertainties into the banking market that hadn't existed before. No one knows if tomorrow the banks are going to be locked up again. How can we be certain? I don't know. You don't know either. No one knows because Trudeau made sure that was the case. He's the one who locked bank accounts without warning. Look at the interest rate problem in Canada, right? And now, of course, it's not just Canada. It's all over the place, but same thing, right? No one knows what to do here because are the interest rates going to increase, or decrease? There's no certainty. And so there is no stability. Regulatory holdup, bills like C-69 and C-48 and others similar to those lead to a serious uncertainty in the energy markets and other markets as well. Trudeau is not a man of stability. He is the complete opposite. He is a man who loves creating chaos and destruction and, oh, wouldn't you know it, despair. Lots of Canadians are in a state of despair right now.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was here. Did you have any interaction with him? And as well, your staff say that you also had a brief interaction with President Xi Jinping. Can you give us a sense of what those interactions were with the Chinese president, and if you made any contact with Narendra Modi?
My priority is always advancing the interests of Canadians, keeping Canadians safe. Certainly in my brief interaction with President Xi, I highlighted that it was a good thing that our ministers were starting to meet more regularly and working together on issues to resolve and to advance our relationship in a way that that is right for us. In terms of engaging with the Indians, my priority is always going to be standing up for Canadians' safety, and that was certainly the tenor of the conversations that I had.
Not at all standing up for Canadian safety. Yeah, right. Just look at, for example, the bail scandal in Canada. Yeah, standing up for Canadian safety. It's safer now in Canada than it's ever been before. Right, sure. No one believes that. Absolutely. How can Trudeau say that he is standing up for Canadians' safety? He is this hammer of justice and law, when he's a man of lawlessness. The truth is he's a man of lawlessness. He has no regard for true law whatsoever. He prefers instead to go after business owners who are spraying apparently too much Windex on their window than he does the man who has killed another. And Canada descends into, again, an anarchy, a sort of chaos because of it. This government is not one of justice. It is the complete opposite. They are a government of injustice.
Avec le président Xi Jinping,
Italy, Japan, UK, talking to them, have you been able to figure out a way to perhaps continue to sustain the Ukrainian war?
Well, I think our focus is very much on the phase we're in right now. There's a lot of speculation about what might happen after inauguration at the end of January. But between now and then, there's still an awful lot to do that we're very much focused on. I know that Ukraine was, I can tell you that Ukraine was brought up significantly by many, many people around the table, not just the G7. We are all extremely concerned about the impact of the destabilization of the rules-based order that Russia has engaged in. And that's why it is important, not just for Ukraine, but for democracies around the world, that we continue to step up. And we're very aware of potential challenges with President Trump coming in, but we're not going to panic. We're going to continue to stay focused on getting the support to Ukraine that Ukraine needs to win this war and establish peace.
Oh yeah, Biden. Yeah, you had Biden there. He was a real president of peace, wasn't he? Yeah, no, he presided over no wars at all, or the starting of no wars at all. It's unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable. And no one really takes Trudeau that seriously, or the other leaders around them seriously, because their foolishness is so evident. We're concerned about President Trump coming into power. Oh yeah, again, because it was so stable under Biden. Yeah. The president who could barely string a sentence together, actually he couldn't string a sentence together, was much more apt to deal with these issues than Trump. Unbelievable.
Okay. Évidemment, nous sommes très conscients que, pourtant, pour les règles,
Do we have an army that's strong enough? Do we have armed forces and weapon systems that we need to defend ourselves in this era, or do we need to rethink those?
I think the world is changing. The world is getting more dangerous, more unstable, which is why we've committed to reaching the 2%, why we've almost doubled.
The world is becoming more dangerous and more unstable for two reasons. The first is because men and women, demagogues like Trudeau, are in power. That's the first reason why. And second, because Jesus Christ is coming back very soon. Paul prophesied this would happen. He said that as the day of Christ drew near, or as it draws near, the world will become increasingly cold, become increasingly unstable, increasingly dangerous. But again, in large part, that danger comes from men like Trudeau. Demagogues who have no problem whatsoever watching their citizens struggle in the name of their, like Trudeau's reprehensible objectives, whatever they might be.
Our investments in defense over the past years, and will continue to over the coming years. We're going to be purchasing submarines. We've upgraded our investments in NORAD. We're strengthening our engagements around NATO. The world is not what it was 10 years ago, and Canada is going to need to make sure we continue to step up, which is exactly why we have been investing significantly more in defense, and we have a concrete track to getting to that 2% by 2032.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. After this summit, the next major summit is the one that you're hosting in June, the G7. It'll also be the first one with a new American president in office. We know what happened the last time you had Donald Trump at a G7. There was a bit of a diplomatic blow up. How have you had to change the way you're thinking about this summit with the American election? And what have you learned from that last experience about how to host a summit that Donald Trump is attending?
And I don't want to relitigate the 2018 G7, but we did an awful lot of good things at that G7. It was the first time that the G7 leaders, or any group of leaders, got together to tackle the question of AI. We created a global partnership for AI that has carried through these past 6-7 years as one of the premier locations and mechanisms for conversations around ethics, around responsible AI that are becoming increasingly relevant and current today. We moved forward with $4 billion for women and girls education in conflict areas around the world that has made a huge difference. It has provided education for hundreds of millions of girls around the world. We moved forward on significant protections for our oceans and getting plastics out of the ocean. So there were many important things we did. But yeah, the challenge of working with an American president that doesn't always put multilateralism and symmetry at a high priority is going to be real. But we navigated it successfully in at the G7 in Charlevoix. There'll be new challenges in this one, I have no doubt. But we've done this before, and when we stay focused on what matters for Canadians, on the principles and the things that are impacting everyone around the world, including American citizens. There's always ways of getting through. I had some good conversations actually at this G20 with South Africa, who will be hosting the G20 at the same time as we're hosting the G7 next year. And it's good to see there's an alignment on a number of the themes we're looking at around how to make sure the economy is working for our citizens, how we're talking about intergenerational fairness, how we step up on climate, how we make sure that emerging economies have the same opportunities to leapfrog over on energy, on technology, so that there's less of a digital divide around the world. These are things that matter to the G7. These are things that will matter to the G20 next year.
We are going to get crushed. If this is the way it is, we're going to get crushed. How do you deal with, there was a diplomatic blow up with Trump last time. Trudeau's diplomatic record is abysmal. Like, it's abysmal. No leader seriously wants to engage with Trudeau. No one, right? This is true with Modi, with India. It's true with Trump. Look at Trudeau's status throughout the world. It's embarrassing to Canada. This man is supposed to represent us, and he represents practically none of us, right? It's embarrassing to have a leader like this. And again, based on that answer alone, there was not an ounce of diplomacy in that answer. How are you going to deal with Trump? And, and Trudeau starts, he talks about how there's going to be issues when you have a president who doesn't align with all of our values and so on and so on and so on. We are going to get annihilated. You compare an interview with Trump versus an interview with Trudeau, the differences are staggering. Staggering, right? This is just an objective fact. It's not even a pro-Trump video at all. It's just to take a look at the two men separately in respective interviews and see who commands more attention, see who commands more superiority, see who commands more presence, see who has more confidence. The difference is unbelievable.